Okay, everyone, this is the Monday, March 25th final office hours before our final Eclipse Mega Movie official Zoom meeting slash training. Welcome, everyone. Hannah Hellman and me, Darlene Yan, are here, as well as Jeffrey Reedy, who is our technical officer. And I also want to introduce He Tran, who is one of our high-level volunteers who's been answering tons of questions. I mean, basically your advisory council, right? Is kind of like the official title. And so I want to introduce you guys, everyone, to the functions on Zoom. We do have a Q&A function on the bottom of your screen. If you've never used that before, it works a little bit differently than the chat. But you're welcome to put things into the chat, although it's kind of best for like the informal discussions. The Q&A you'll see is very much structured to like, here's a question, and then, one of us can answer it, and it's kind of like documented. And again, this is being recorded, so we will have this available to the wider universe, our YouTube channel, as soon as we are done processing this. So yes, welcome. And I want to especially give space and room for anyone who's joined us just in the last 2 weeks, our brand new stars. Welcome. We're so excited for you to join us. But we knew that there are a lot of kind of technical aspects and social aspects of, location and travel and that sort of a thing. And so maybe just a quick hands if you guys want to raise your hand on the video or do a little hands up icon of who is viewing a total solar eclipse for the first time. Anyone? Oh, go on. Yeah. Yeah. Is there anyone who is photographing an eclipse in an official capacity as opposed to just casually with your cell phone for the first time? Okay, we're in good hands. All right. So again, this office hours is for specific questions, exactly like if you were in college and you went to your professor's office hours. So yeah, let's go ahead and get those rolling. Feel free to put those into the chat or into the Q&A. Okay. Oh, how did the social hour go? So it was fantastic. So Kathy, thank you, Kathy. And I held a beginners only social hour the other Saturday. And I will be the first to tell anybody that I have taught eclipse science for 20 years, but only went to my first one 2017, and I am not a photographer in any way. But I will be in Mazatlan, and so my location was just so beneficial to the program that they handed me a DSLR and a tripod, and Jeffrey literally took me to the side and trained me one-on-one on how to do this. And he uploaded Nina, my software, and pre-programmed everything for me. So all I have to do is not mess it up and just press the button and follow the instructions carefully. So that is my experience of it. But yes, Kathy was very helpful. Thank you on Saturday. We did record that one, but that one's informal, and that's just for to share on the down low. We're not putting that one out on YouTube. Okay. Oh, Gary has a question. Okay.
Looks like a Jeffrey question.
Yeah. I'll say it out loud. Gary's question is, I've been refining my Digicam control script, but still get some extra frames and missed frames. Is this something that the Python team can live with?
So my question is, the missed frames, are those missed exposures, or they're just fewer frames?
Gary, you can feel free to respond verbally if you'd like.
Someone just wouldn't behave themselves, so they get to be on camera.
Okay. Hi, Gary.
Oh, still muted.
No,
your,
Does your
No, he's
headset have a microphone?
we can see you're talking, but we can't hear you.
okay. So I think in general, extra frames are fine. Um, what I'm going to say, missed frames, if it's missing exposures, would prefer not to miss those. But if they're like the exposures had certain exposures had two you know, you take two images. Everything that's defined in the gold standard is kind of like minimum, right? So if you're getting extra frames per exposures, I think that's fine. More is better than less, if that makes sense. Um, I'm getting at least one exposure per level. Okay, so at least one exposure per level. So ideally we'd like at least two, you know, for most of them. It's when the shutter speed gets really short, right? There's far fewer photons that are hitting the sensors, and we need the extra exposures to deal with the signal noise ratio. If you don't get them, it just means that the data that you submit is going to be a little bit noisier, and that might be something that the Python team can deal with. Whatever you're able to submit is fine. Okay. It just means that that particular data set is going to be a little bit more noisier than some of the others. That's all it means. And where that really matters the most is when the shutter speeds are at their shortest. And it's just simply because there's so far fewer photons that are actually being captured by the sensor.
Gary, you can nod. Was that answer satisfactory? Okay, cool.
Oh.
Oh,
Still can't hear me.
no, I can hear you now.
Oh, you can. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
The only issue I'm worried about with the extra frames is it lengthens the loop,
The
and
sequence.
I can't get two full loops in the duration of the eclipse where I'm going to be at. But
Right. So, are you thinking about running it through twice? Is that what the deal is?
yeah, that's not as big an issue. I'm trying to get that into the length of the eclipse down where I'm going to be in Texas. I'm
Mhm.
going to have 4 minutes and 21 seconds, and
Okay.
when I try to run two loops, it's running over by 10 or 20 seconds. I've thought about dropping a frame or two from the 1/50th of a second, but my big concern is in some of the places where it calls for two frames, I'm only getting one exposure.
Mhm.
If it's calling for three, I might be dropping one. I
I
don't
see.
know if I've ever lost two at that level.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just here and there, there's going to be a missing frame at a certain level of exposures.
Okay. Okay. And that might have to do with your setup. So,
It's not too many. It's like it's dropping maybe 7. It's I think the max I've ever had dropped in one run. That
okay.
and like I said, there's still at least one at each level.
Okay. So let's just say you get one at each level, but you're able to run it twice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're able to get through it sufficiently, getting all the exposures. I think that's far better than missing any.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So no stress.
I set more wait time between the exposures, and that's doesn't seem to be making any difference.
Right.
So
Yeah, the software component of this has been pretty hit or miss.
mhm.
And people are using different kinds of software, and unfortunately the level of support that each type of software gives for a given camera is kind of hit or miss,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I saw a lot of anguish for the Sony users, and I'm like, yeah, I'm terribly sorry about that, unfortunately. Okay, so let's see here.
All right, so Gary's was answered live. Daniela asks, the forecast for Dallas on eclipse day is for partly cloudy skies. What if it's partly cloudy and some frames are of the cloudy skies?
You get what you get, and you submit what you get.
Mhm. Precisely. Yeah, we are, you can't control the weather. We can't control the weather. We've been saying prayers for, cloud-free skies for days, but to a certain extent, you do what you can.
I've been praying to the weather gods every day.
Yep.
Right.
Are you offering sacrifices in the form of, I don't know, corn?
I cannot disclose.
Good answer.
Please
So-
include Northeast Texas in your prayers.
Well, I'm gonna be there, so yes.
Okay.
So any problems starting my so this is from John. Oh, hold on. Let me scroll back up because my thing keeps scrolling back down. Any problems starting my sequence 20 seconds before C2, not asking about safety? I don't think so. But before C2, you most likely will need your solar filter on. And once you reach C2, pull it off.
Okay. Awesome. JCRB put in the chat and he got it to the Q&A for us. For the short frames, how much more than 5 would be desirable for noise reduction?
So for the shorter shutter speeds,
Right, if we're like 60 and 50.
right, 1/60th, 1/50th. 10 frames.
Okay. Because I eventually gave up on the software, right? And I was just figuring out what it would do just to do it by hand, right? And so,
Right. So you're probably setting up kind of like
right, there's
five
10
or
each, right?
five where it takes 5 continuous exposures really fast, rapid fire type of thing.
That's just I'm gonna just hit it with a remote trigger, change the speed, hit it with a remote trigger,
Change the speed.
switch over to 9 brackets, hit the trigger 5 times, change to 9 brackets, hit the trigger twice. It takes 40 seconds to run the whole thing, and then I go back to doing other stuff. Right. In other words, there's just no
Right.
It's no point using software when you have enough shutter speed.
That's
And
perfectly
but for the 50 and the 60, right, at 20 frames a second, I can give you kind of almost as many as you want. So it's just
Right.
like, how many would you like to get the noise reduction down, right? It's
about 10.
Okay.
See, and Daniela, I tested full sequence and it takes the full list in the gold standard for 3 minutes and 36 seconds. Wow, you're pretty special. You're lucky.
I programmed it with Backyard Nikon
Okay,
Nina didn't work for me. It
Yeah.
did not connect to my my Nikon 7100.
yeah,
And I bought the backyard Nikon for 2 cameras. So I scripted everything and it controls my 2 cameras at the same time and tested it several times exactly per the list with 1 second delay between shots.
mhm,
And I will be in a path of totality for where it is gonna be. What is it? 4 minutes and 2 seconds, something like that.
okay.
So in 3 minutes and 36 seconds, I'm able to complete the entire set.
No, sounds great.
Couple of questions, Daniela.
Yes, sir.
Are you saving to camera only?
Oh, okay. Well, that's an excellent question. If you're saving to both camera and PC, it takes forever.
Mhm.
Saving to
Right.
camera only, I tested it several times. There is no chance for you to complete everything in the
Right.
time allotted with saving on PC and the camera. So
Right.
camera.
So if you're running into the issue where transferring to the PC is taking an exorbitant amount of time, just save to the camera. You can always pull the images directly from the SD card, right? It looks like for most individuals, it's that transferring over the USB bus, and it depends on how many megapixels, the size of the images that you're actually able to get, will determine the transit, how long it takes to transit over the USB bus to your computer. There's always a penalty that's involved with that process of transferring it from the processing it takes on the camera, pulling that image off that camera and storing it on the computer. It could take as little as 3 seconds. It could take as much as 5 seconds. If you're running into that issue, it's just better to use the software as a trigger for the camera and pulling the images is off later.
I'm getting much better times with Backyard Nikon than you're getting. But I'm using a 0 pause, no 1 second pause.
Okay. I don't know. Raphael, having no pause in between, will that heat up the sensor, producing a little bit more noise
We're just laying there.
No pause in between what?
in between images? So what John was saying is he's putting in a 0-second pause in between images as they're being captured. Having them taken rapid fire like that, does that increase the possibility of noise?
Depends on the camera. What camera we're talking about?
I've got a Nikon D5300, which is got a mirror in it, and then I'm using my Z5, which is mirrorless.
Okay.
Oh, right, yeah. So I've tested the Z7. I've tested the Z7 II. I haven't tested the Z5, but in general, mirrorless tend to heat up more. However, they intrinsically are less noisy sensors. And so I've tested that. I made a statistical analysis of the noise. And so with those cameras, you don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
And regarding the what Nikon do you have? Which one?
D5300 and Z5.
Oh, right. Yeah, the D50, yeah, the 5300 doesn't fire fast enough to cause any concern regarding heating up.
Okay.
I'm getting for a whole sequence, I'm getting 95 seconds on the D5300 and 89 seconds on the Z5. That's why I'm kind of wondering what's going on with Danielle and how come it's taken so long for hers. Because I'm using Backyard Nikon too.
Yeah,
Well,
but
I watched a tutorial with the gentleman who created the Eclipse Orchestrator. I'm
Mhm.
terrible with names. I don't remember, but it was several hours, kind of a long tutorial online, and he mentioned that he actually asks for 2 seconds before, a pause between shots. I tested that. Obviously, I cannot do it. It takes much longer than the actual totality. So I went down and tested 1 second between. That's why it's taking me. If I don't put pause of 1 second between shots, I obviously will be able to complete them much faster.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now. And it's screaming along with 0 pause.
You have something to add?
If I could remember to unmute, yes. So Tom, oh gosh, what's his guy's name? Vake, and Alan Johnston helped me out with Eclipse Orchestrator. You have to look at the log file if you're using Eclipse Orchestrator, and what you can do is you can just put like 0.1 second in a loop, and then 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. It took me about 5 minutes in front of my computer connected to the camera to test out to see that with about 0.8 or 0.9 seconds, I was not dropping frames. That is very specific to your camera, cable, and computer. So the fact that I can get it to be reliable at 0.8 or 0.9, and so I use 1 second pause between shots, works for my specific combination. So if you're going to be using Eclipse Orchestrator, some combinations will be slower, some will be faster, and as Fred Brunches with Moonglow Technology states, if you get the old-fashioned cable and the professional version, you eliminate the communications lag with USB.
No, it requires actually that other, what is it?
That second
Serial-
cable.
Yeah,
Yes.
the second cable that nobody manufactures anymore. So I actually, I'm not gonna use it because
Yeah.
The live view is not working with my camera.
Correct.
I paid $100 just
Sure.
not to use it, but Backyard Nikon works beautifully and controls both my cameras and
Yes.
they run, and I've tested it like, I don't know, a dozen
Right.
times so far.
Right. And
So-
I have a Canon, not a Nikon. I have Backyard EOS for the Canons, and but with the new computer, I was having issues with Backyard EOS, and I said I'm not going to try to troubleshoot that. And if it works for you,
Yeah,
outstanding. And you're a happy camper, and that's great.
and the live view is working for both cameras, so
Yes.
yeah, I am a happy camper.
Yes. And you can focus with the live view, right? And
Sure.
my checklist says run EOS utility, focus and center everything, exit EOS utility, and then launch the other software. And I would also add, all of you, at least for me, I work much better with a printed checklist than
Yeah.
something on the computer. And so I'll have the printout with me and the pencil, and then, okay, done that, check, done that, check, Don't forget to bring the checklist. That needs to be on the checklist too.
Mine is colored and
Oh,
printed.
wow.
And I have I'm a research scientist. This is what I do for a living. So I have redundancy upon redundancy. So I have both the plan saved on the computer, on the laptop, and I also have a printed colored chart with all of these like prompts. Make sure that your focus is
Yes.
okay. Make sure that you have locked your your zoom lens,
Yes.
all of that, and it's in colors, and yeah.
Daniela,
I'm thinking to laminate it. This is how far I can go. Laminating my checklists and using them during the eclipse. Yes, sir.
can you upload your script for that?
For my checklist?
No, the script for backyard, Nikon backyard.
Yeah, I will have to transfer it from my laptop. Where do I upload it?
Are you on our Discord?
Yeah, Discord.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah,
Okay.
you should,
There's a software channel now. That would be perfect for it.
All right.
yeah, you should be able to just upload it, you know, like an attachment.
It's a TXT file, right? I'll upload it. Yes. So
Yeah, Discord will hold it for us.
for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question. Jason Miller has a question for you, Jeffrey, about camera choice. He says, I'm trying to decide which cameras I'll be using with which scopes, since I'll be traveling with several. For the scope I'll be using for this project, I can either use a standard DSLR camera or a dedicated astronomy CMOS camera, which can take many more exposures in the time of totality than DSLR. Do we prefer one or the other, either a couple full sequences with the DSLR or about 2 to 3 times as many with the CMOS?
I don't necessarily have a preference, with the exception that whatever lens that you use with that particular camera meets the requirement of the field of view.
Okay.
Okay.
And would we measure that in like the millimeters of zoom or?
Well, I don't know what kind of CMOS camera he's referring to.
Mm,
If it's a DSLR, if the sensor size is APS-C, the ideal focal length for that is about 300 millimeters. Although we do specify a range that they can be in, taking into account the various different hardware combinations that people have. If it's a full frame camera, the ideal is 500 millimeters, with 600 being at the upper end of the spectrum and 300 being at the lower end of the spectrum. We prefer to be as close to the ideal as possible, because then that gives you like a vertical field of view that's about 2.5 degrees and a diagonal field of view of about 5 degrees.
okay, Jason, was that satisfactory? Do you have any follow-up questions?
Yeah,
can
and in my
unmute.
case,
Yeah.
in my case, both would fall within the range. So if I use the DSLR, it's full frame, it would be 384 millimeters. If I use the astronomical camera, it's APS-C and it would be 576. So they're both within the range, and neither is really exactly on. So
Right.
yeah.
So if the sensor size in the CMOS camera is APS-C, 500 millimeters is kind of outside of that. By a
Oh,
good
sorry.
margin.
No, that would be the effective. It's essentially it's 384 times the right.
Okay. Yeah, if whichever you think is going to get the most sharpest images is the one that I would choose.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. We have a question about the sequence. How do you pronounce your name? Virgilio?
Virgilio or Virgil, if you want.
Virgil is nice and easy for someone like me. Thank you. I noticed that the sequence file for 1/3 only stops is the same as the main, both stops file. He edited the 1/3 stops file to match the gold standard found in the document, and just making sure this is correct.
Are you using Nina or are you using something else, Virgil?
I started trying with Nina, and in the resources, I found that both files are the same. So I'm not sure if that's correct or not, but
It shouldn't be. Yeah, the 1/3 should only be 1/3, stop exposures. Where'd you get the JSON files?
I checked the in the document, in the main document that we receive, the
Okay.
40 pages. And then I directly in the site on the resources.
Right,
It's the same, right? It's the same resource.
right.
JSON file. I compared the to the main file, and they are exactly the same. So not anyone.
Let me take a look here.
Yeah.
So I just downloaded it and I'm going to open it up in my version of Nina here.
Okay.
So I just pulled it off the website.
Yeah.
Is that sounds kind of weird to me.
My camera only supports 1/3 stops, and
Right. Yeah, so if you redo it in 1/3 stops, it's fine. It's perfectly okay.
okay, just okay. So we just need to follow the gold standard that is in the so okay.
Yep.
Okie dokie. Wick requested an update or even just some conversation about the upload procedures. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you what you're going to be dealing with. So we have the upload survey put together. There is some language that needs to be changed before we make it available to all of you, but I want you to see what you're going to be looking at when it comes time to upload your pictures. So it's going to take you through a few different menus. Keep in mind, this is not the final text, but we're going to ask you questions about your camera make, your camera model again, because this is the best way to make sure that we know exactly what we need to do with your data that you submit. And so that we can store it correctly, file it correctly, and use it correctly, really. So you'll go through a couple different things. Really, this question, do you have all the information you need for the survey, corresponds to all of this. So please, if you don't have all of this information and you are able to have it, please have all of it ready before you start the survey, is something that I will say. So let's say, yes, I have all the information I need. Put your state where you were in the eclipse. I'm going to be in Indiana. Your camera make, I have a Canon. My Canon is an EOS R8. My zoom lens is 300. Okay. I'm not sure about the diameter of my lens, but we have a guide to find it. So I would then go do that, and I would enter the diameter of my lens, etc.
For the data team, that diameter is actually the diameter of the filter, and that is not the lens diameter. So if you're trying to calculate the stuff, and I were refereeing your paper, I would give you a hard time.
Okay, I'm going to write that down. Can you say that one more time
Luckily, it
for
is
me, please?
unlikely that unless you're doing calibration, it is unlikely that someone would ask me to referee your paper. So.
No, I want it though. So can you explain that for me one more time? It's the diameter of the filter, not the lens.
Yes, yes. When you see that little phi symbol, it's actually a GD&T, geometric dimension and tolerancing symbol for diameter, but that is the filter diameter that you can screw into the front of the lens.
I see.
So that the 77 means that you buy a 77 millimeter threaded filter to thread onto the lens.
Is a better question, what is the maximum aperture of your lens, like f2.8?
Well, they're shooting
no,
at
that's a totally
f8,
different
or they're asking us to shoot at f8, right? A better question, and this would require extra effort, would be, what is the model of the lens? And so I have an EFS 55-250 because I'm cheap. Frugal. Don't say cheap. I'm frugal.
There you go.
But like Adobe has models for the EFS 250. And so Adobe, if you were to use Adobe, has a photo something profile for a gazillion lenses out there,
Right.
including actually the inexpensive Korean Samyang lenses. I have a fisheye, a Samyang. I don't remember the exact model, but I was amazed. Adobe had a profile for that lens.
Okay.
Now, I'm not sure if the data team is going to use any Adobe products for the post-processing. I'm assuming that this is going to be a very custom application that they're working on. So I'm not.
What would you use the diameter of the lens for?
I can answer that question. You need it when you're using a telescope because you won't be able to calculate the f-stop otherwise. So my raw files don't have the aperture in it because it's a manual connection to my camera. But if you have the diameter of the lens and the focal length, you can compute the aperture.
I see.
Okay. So probably the better question then is, or maybe you put some logic into the system where if you're looking at the metadata and the metadata does not report the focal length and the f-stop, then the data logic then uses the diameter information.
If you have a Nikon camera, it has a little spot in the menu where you can add non Nikon lenses, and it will take the focal length and the aperture and the all the data that you really need, and it'll put it on the EXIF.
Oh, neat. That's good to know.
If you have a standard lens, if you're off lens like me, 5.9, you can't put that in there.
Aha. Okay, this is good to know. Really great feedback. Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to keep clicking through this so you can get.
So I'm happy to tell you I have a 58mm filter, but I will just let you know in advance.
Yeah.
My metadata will tell you his focal length is set at 250 and he's got f8, and use that data. Don't use whatever I stick into it.
Yeah, we will probably be reaching out to you soon for a bit more in-depth conversation about this. Stay tuned. We asked about your camera sensor size. Sure. We asked for the latitude and longitude.
Okay.
Are your photographs time-stamped to within a second and in local time? You will see local time pop up a few times while you're taking the survey to upload your photograghs. So bear that in mind.
Is that in long in degrees, minutes, and seconds, or is it just decimal degrees?
That is a really good question. Could you say that one more time for me?
Is latitude expressed in degrees, minutes, and seconds, or is it in decimal degrees?
Well, it could be expressed in both, but I think we prefer decimal.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'll make sure to write that in. Prefer decimal.
All right.
I'm really glad I decided to do this. What was the ambient temperature near your camera at the time of totality? And I expect your cameras will tell you this.
You might put into the question also and specify whether you're using Fahrenheit, Celsius, and for those of us who are nerds, Kelvin or Rankine. But no, don't put Kelvin and Rankine.
No.
But I will
convert it
specify.
very easily.
But you should put in the specify C or F also.
I will. Yes, that's
And
a great
then
call.
the Python people can read the text and parse out what it was.
Mhm.
Hey, Hannah,
Okay,
going
awesome.
back to the lat long, there are very easy available online converters between degrees, minutes and seconds to decimals. So if
Uh-huh.
you have one or the other, you can always find.
Okay, and I can post a link to a converter in the question too.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great call out. Thank you, Daniela. Okay.
Dividing by 60, you can do it by hand.
But that takes math.
Or it takes knowing how to use your cell phone, which is stretching my limits.
We asked you, so we will ask you, did you take flats? We really hope you take flats. And we'll ask you to quickly describe the process you used to take flats. This does not need to be an essay, but we just want to know how you did it so that when we look at your data that you collect, and this is true for anybody, when we look at the data that you collect, we want to be able to say for certain that that speck on the photo is from the sun and not from your camera. That's really why we're going to be a little, specific in our collection of this data. Same thing with darks. Describe the process. Did you experience any issues while taking your photographs that we should know about? This could be like a leaf blew onto your lens and touched it and got it dirty, or, it was a little cloudy.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The zombie apocalypse came in the middle of taking the photos, and
but I got
and the
some
sun
really
just
great
split the
pictures.
zombies. Yes.
It
You can
started
also-
snowing.
That would be a
Ooh.
problem.
Yeah,
Although kind of cool, probably. Or cold, I suppose.
cold.
The type of file you're uploading, you can choose what you're uploading. We really prefer RAW. Were you able to meet the gold standard for aperture specifically? Were you able to meet the gold standard for the ISO? And some of you are not doing ISO 100, and we've talked about it, and it's fine. So we ask, what did you do instead? And all you have to do is type that in. Were you able to meet the gold standard for the number of photographs at particular shutter speeds or exposure times? Some of you did it differently, so you can just hit no and say, what were you able to do instead? Were you able to follow the sun's motion across the sky using an equatorial mount? We really do want you to use an equatorial mount, but not everyone has one, and that's fine, and we've already talked about all that. So here's the question, how did you take your photographs? Because we are accepting, we will not be using for the same reasons or the same science, but we are accepting mobile phone pictures, telescope pictures, other images not within the gold standard. We are accepting them, and we'll see what we do with them. We don't know quite yet.
Oh,
But I don't
let
have
me interject right here, because a lot of people have been asking, oh, if I'm not a star, can I still submit photos? And we're
Okay.
saying, yes, absolutely. We're calling it the 2017 method. And so not to stress, if something should happen, I mean, this is my backup plan. If something should happen in my travels to Mazatlan, I'm not able to achieve gold standard, but I can do something. I will submit them the 2017 way, which means I will click on this and saying, I had some issues, but here you go, do something. Yeah.
So if I
Totally.
use a normal camera and a normal lens, I select none on this list?
When you say normal, do you mean according to the photography standards that we've all talked about?
Yeah.
That needs to be a choice, and that.
Yeah, it sure does, doesn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Depends on if you're
Thank
in
you,
one of
Rick.
the gaps or not.
One of the gaps?
One of the gaps in the chain on the eclipse
Oh,
path.
I
There are
see.
always some
Yeah.
gaps in there.
Yeah. Okay. Writing notes to myself, and we're almost done with this, and then it'll be time to start wrapping it up. Well, I'm sure there's more questions to answer really
With
quickly. But
polarized, will they be able to specify the orientation of polarization, or if it was a circular polarization? Because the polarization in the sky is orientation dependent. I still remember my oh dear God, I still remember my electromagnetics physics.
But is the corona polarized?
So I think the reason that you saw the polarized with a question mark is because we're really not sure we're going to be taking them. And it's probably for this reason. So let me talk to Laura and all of Laura's camera people, Raphael probably included, and we will give you an update.
Richard has his hand up.
Oh, sure, Richard.
Yeah, I'm just suggesting that if you happen to have a linear polarizer, because you can still get linear polarizers, it's just autofocus doesn't work with them. If you took linear polarized and then you rotate 90 degrees and then mark them as such, you could check whether the corona is polarized and see if you can get an orientation. I don't know if the polarizing filters actually indicate the direction of your polarization though. So, that may be waving your hands a bit.
Neat. Thanks,
Well,
Richard.
before you finish the section, let us know the link that we need to go to so I can write it down. I'm going to leave Thursday. So
This will be blasted out everywhere. It's going to be in the Discord. It's going to be in every single email listserv. It's going to be all over the website. It's going to be on social media. You can, if you don't see it in any of those places within a short amount of time after the eclipse, reach out to one of us and we'll get you that link. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure you have my
I'm on the
email.
road
If you
and I
send me
don't
a
know
message
my
on
Wi-Fi.
Discord. Yeah, no, don't worry. Richard, go ahead.
Yes, just another question. If you put in the latitude and longitude, what use is the stating what state you're in other than given what kind of rowdy people you have around you?
True. I think the state is more for just the organization of the data. It comes down to we're going to use the latitude and longitude to align the photographs.
Okay.
That's what the lat long is for. But in terms of data collection, we're sorting the people into different state buckets. So we're doing big buckets to smaller buckets.
Okay.
And so for Darlene, who is in Mazatlan, will she be able to say I was outside of the US?
Yes, it's a free text entry kind of situation. You don't have to select anything.
Got it.
You could write that you were on Mars if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
I wish I would be on Mars, but let's not go there.
By the
Or
way,
you couldn't have an eclipse on Mars.
Mazatlan's in Sinaloa, by the way.
Okay, not Sonora. I missed it by just one.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I will be sitting right on the border between two states, depending on what side of the main road through Torreon I'm at.
Oh,
that's
cool.
Interesting. You could probably put both states.
Okay, I will do that.
That's what
But as long
flashes are
as your
for.
lat long is
Yeah,
specific.
I will have the lat long. I'm going to be taking a photograph of my GPS and I'll be submitting that as well to give exact location.
Okay, I'm going to finish this up just so that we can answer a couple more questions before we turn over. One of the last things you'll do is acknowledge that the photographs you are turning over will be available for free use. Creative Commons 0 is the license that we will assign to it. And this is the acknowledgement that you are saying, yes, I understand. Anybody can use my picture, but with credit, and they can't change it. They can't take credit themselves for it. That kind of thing. It's like Wikimedia Commons, more like. And I think I'm going to add a link to this question to define what CC0 is.
It's for most people trying to understand what it is. It's like public domain. It's the same difference.
Yeah, precisely.
When we're producing data research, it has to be made available to the public to be able to view and analyze the data as well.
And because we're funded by NASA, everything that we produce must be so. And then we'll ask you how you would like your name to be displayed with your, just for recognition purposes, and if it's displayed with the photographs that you've taken. So if you have like a call name that you use that isn't, you know, your legal God-given name, that's totally great too. You know, I could put Hannah, I could put like Lemon. Sometimes I have a username called Lemon. Somebody had a question?
Yeah, I have one I just thought of. On the, do we want the date stamp, the date and time stamp that shows up on the exposure, or is that just part of the metadata?
It's usually part of the metadata, but
Yeah, I think metadata. I don't necessarily think you need to stamp that on the photograph itself, if that is
Okay.
what you're asking. Yeah, just metadata is fine and probably preferred because it'll make it easier to align too.
Right.
And so then you'll enter your email address. Oh my gosh. I'm sure everyone knows that's my email by now. And then boom, we're done. So it's not ready for release yet. It will be ready soon. I am hoping to have it ready for you at least a week before the eclipse so that you can get in there and look at it. But please don't submit anything until you're actually ready to submit your photos because it's hard to filter stuff out. With that, I can stop sharing and we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
I have a question. Has anybody been able to sync their Canon camera via cell phone to get live GPS and the metadata directly to their camera? Anybody using a Canon camera that uses the Canon app?
I saw that.
I've done that successfully on an R6 Mark II.
Yeah, that's me. I have an R6 Mark II and I have the Canon Connect, so I could get GPS signal to my metadata, but I'm having difficulty getting it connected.
Yeah, it worked for me. I just followed the bouncing ball. I don't know if I have any special insight into what's going on.
David, are you part of our Discord server?
I am.
This is a question you can definitely ask there, and maybe if you post it you can post it in general, you can post it in Canon, and then I'll try and make sure that it gets answered on there. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to kind of really like figure out what the issue is or offer any experience and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was going to do the same thing, take a picture of my lat long and just add that along with the metadata.
Oh, sure.
That's actually my plan is to take a picture of my laptop with the USB connected and the timestamp with my Canon.
But I know you have a Canon 77. Yeah. There's something called Canon Connect, which then Bluetooths right to your laptop and then puts the metadata in.
So when I try using Bluetooth on my phone and my Canon, you don't want to have young children around.
No, if you're Bluetoothing from your cell phone to your laptop, and then your laptop's connected to your camera via the cable.
Okay.
Don't keep the kids away.
I'm an empty nester now, but still.
Yeah, I can connect directly from my iPhone to my camera. There's no laptop involved.
Through Bluetooth?
Yes. And you can also do it by Wi-Fi. The camera can act as a Wi-Fi access point, and then you connect to the camera.
Yeah, I saw that. I can connect Wi-Fi, but I would prefer to do Bluetooth since I'm going to be out in rather desolate areas, and I don't know if I'm going to get a decent cell signal to make it a hotspot.
So the Bluetooth connection on my Canon with my cell phone then tells the cell phone, we are going to reconnect you to the camera using Wi-Fi, whether you like it or not.
Interesting.
Yes, and it creates a private Wi-Fi, and all kinds of strange things happen, which is why I say that my language gets colorful.
Yeah, that I got a little colorful for sure. As it was connecting Wi-Fi fine, but I'm like, I want the Bluetooth because I don't want any problems with communication from the laptop to the camera. And it wasn't working, even though it said it should.
So yes, I have a camera connect on my phone, the latest version, and I've given up.
We had the same problem, and we're probably using the same Hubble palette when we use our colorful words.
Yes.
And some of you got that. Thank you.
All righty. It went straight over my head, but I'm sure it was very funny.
That's a palette in Photoshop. You can pick what kind of colors you want. It's called
lavender or chartreuse or vomit green.
Yeah.
Raphael, I think I saw your hand up. You were going to add one last thing, and then we'll do our transition over to the official meeting. If any of you asked a question, but it did not get answered, you can let me know via direct message or send me an email. We'll get your question answered. Okay, go ahead, Raphael. And then
I mean, do you want me to answer the polarization question, or was it answered?
Sure, quickly, if you understand it.
I mean, I only have what's been repeated by he. Is the corona polarized? And the answer is yes. So it is actually the object of the future mission called Punch to image the corona with polarized brightness. And thanks to the polarization, we can reconstruct the 3D structure of the plasma flow that propagates with the solar wind. So it's highly valuable scientifically. And and I think I was hearing something about using polarizers for the eclipse, and it's something that can be done. Sorry. But polarizer, when you look directly at the sun, doesn't really work. Polarizer, to be effective, you would actually have to sort of look away. So that would be something incompatible with the imaging an eclipse. So yeah, I wouldn't use, at least for the Mega Movie, I wouldn't use a polarizer. But if you want to run a separate experiment, it can be a fun thing to do. If you also have a wide field of view and use a polarizer, you can get interesting effects.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Raphael. Dar, let's stop recording if we haven't already. And then we will officially transition into the meeting. Hello, Laura.